Good chocolate starts with good beans. If you don't have well processed beans, you can't make good chocolate.
Saran, can you share a little from your perspective and your experience? How does a typical day look like for a cocoa farmer? How is like your work and the things that you need to do during the year, maybe as well?
Okay. First of all, over the last 3 to 5 years, we have witnessed some very erratic weather conditions. And I say erratic in that 3 years ago, we had extreme flooding. And then last year, we had intense heat. So it's kind of moving to extremes. I've been talking to other farmers who are experiencing the same weather pattern, and what it does, it causes the trees to respond in different ways. For example,
Saran, thank you for coming to this podcast. We have been lucky to have met you twice already on Shokoa, a global event for craft chocolate makers and also for chocolate lovers, I have to say. And now I would like to have a talk with you around like the cocoa farming processes. And you are an expert in that already for years. But before I dive into that, I would like to know, what do I need to understand from you in the early years to understand who you are today?
okay, I am a third generation cocoa farmer. My grandparents and parents were cocoa farmers. So I more or less born and grew up in the cocoa um, plantation. However, I spent most of my working life with the government service. And when I retired in 2014, I decided to go back to the estate, which I inherited from my parents, and to start a rehabilitation program to bring back the estate back into production. And that is how I became a farmer once again in the latter part of my, retirement. So here I am back into cocoa production and with my wife making chocolate.
How young were you the first time you were working there as a farmer?
Well, as I said, I was born into it. All I knew all my youthful life was cocoa, the cocoa plantation. You know, you had no choice but to follow your parents in the fields and in the processing. It was like from school to the estate and, help whatever you can do throughout. So it was part of family life.
Were many people like your friends or people your age also working in farms for cocoa, or it was something really particular of you, like not so normal in the Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, no, in the area that I lived, there were cocoa farmers throughout. It was one of the major cocoa growing region in the island. And there were some large farmers as well as many small farmers. So the entire area was engaged in cocoa. So it was everybody followed that pattern. From very young, you follow your parents into the cocoa fields. You went to school. Many of the parents educated their children to get out of the cocoa field because they thought that that was too hard a life and to find a better life outside of the field. So, yeah, that's how it was. It was a natural progression. In fact, the cocoa estate was the main sustenance for the family.
Yeah, I I understand that part. Like, I'm wondering, over those years, what kind of farming techniques have been evolved in the generations?
Well, there was a time when cocoa was one of the main export earners for the country. That was in the early 1900s, up until 1978, around 1975, 1978, when the oil and gas boom came. And that is when a lot of farmers abandoned their estates and went into searching for employment in the oil and gas industry. So there was a time when cocoa was, as we say, cocoa was king. And then there was this rapid decline.
So it was actually for economical reasons.
Yes, yes.
Purely that.
Purely that.
Do you see maybe something happening in a nowadays environment as well? As it is very hard nowadays also to work in cocoa, produce cocoa.
Yeah. It all has to do with return on investment. If the investment doesn't have a good return, then you would not attract, unless people like myself who has a passion for it, and then I joined my wife, and so we were able to add value to the beans that I produced. That was able to take us a little further down the value chain and get a greater return. But it's still a challenge right now. But I think more and more young people are seeing it that way, to add value. And there is a gradual coming back to the plantations.
Saran, can you share a little from your perspective and your experience? How does a typical day look like for a cocoa farmer? How is like your work and the things that you need to do during the year, maybe as well?
Okay. First of all, you must organize your work plan, what you're going to do at what point in time during the year. Of course, you have the harvesting period. So you will organize your work accordingly for harvesting. So we just came out of the harvesting period. So the trees are resting right now. So I'm organizing my workers. I have 5 workers. They are all temporary. I am organizing them to begin maintenance work. And that is when we will go into the fields, clean all the drains, clean around the trees, and start looking at areas where we will resupply, put in young trees. We will do some pruning and prepare for putting down fertilizer, and also some spraying to keep away the fungus, which could do damage to the pods. So yeah, maintenance work is what we are organizing right now. The typical day will be in the field by 6:30. We'll have all our tools and everything ready in the field to start work, and we will work until 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., depending on how the work is, so that we complete a portion of work. Yeah, and that's what it's like.
So so it's very interesting, right? You give already an idea of how your day look like, and now it's all based around maintenance. So maybe it's good that you divide them in certain phases. So now you're in the maintenance phase, let's say it like that.
Yeah.
Can we go through all those phases where cocoa basically go through in a year period, and maybe dive a bit into what are let's say, you already shared a bit around what you will do around the maintenance period. So you will fertilize, you will check in there. I'm also very curious of like, okay, where do you precisely look at? What are for you the most interesting parts where you put more attention towards in that particular period or particular phase?
Okay. The harvesting period, where we just came out of, there will be some remnants of black pods and ripe pods that it's not economical to harvest. So we will take them down the tree. We'll clean the tree. You don't want any pods remaining on the tree, so you will clean the tree. You would want to make sure that there is no parasites on the tree. So you clean the trees, of all parasites. And you have the tree ready for the flowering. At this point in time, where we just came out of the harvesting, the trees, would have been under stress. So you don't want to put them under more stress. So you do minimal, uh, tampering with the trees. You leave them, let they recondition themselves. So you do more groundwork, cleaning the drains, preparing for fertilizing. We do supplying of young trees. Where there are space, we clear and we prepare to put down young plants. Now it's too dry right now. It's very dry in our country right now. It's the dry season. So you find that you can't do much groundwork. You have to be careful how much groundwork you do, because bushfire could be a dangerous thing, if you have plenty dry straw on the ground. So you prepare for all those things. So between now and end of May, we will be doing all those work. Right now, with the intense heat, the trees are now throwing out new leaves and new branches are coming out. So those leaves have to mature, and then when they mature, so that now the trees are strong enough, you can get into the heavy pruning. Now you would observe now, you can see clearly what are the branches you need to take out and prune, so that you prepare the tree for flowering starting around June, July. And around that same time, you will be doing some spraying to preserve what pods come out from the major disease that we have, which is the black pod disease. It's a fungus, and that comes around when the rains start in early June. So in May, you will start doing some preventative spraying to protect the trees. And so flowering will start end of May, June, July, and the pods will start coming out.
What is in this process the most key moment that you say, this is our win or lose? Like, if we don't take this month or these weeks, like care of right care, we might we might face a really hard a really hard harvesting.
Yeah, I would say pruning. Pruning is the most important activity. To have your tree ready for a good harvest, a good crop.
What varieties of cocoa are you growing, Saran?
We grow Trinitario, the Trinitario variety. Now, our plantation, I should mention, our plantation is 120-year-old plantation. It is what I inherited from my grandparents, parents, right? So, and these are the old trees. And they are very faithful to us because they produce a fantastic variety. And we don't want to get rid of them at all. So whatever trees that we resupply from grafting from these old trees. So now with these trees, they are not the most productive. Of course, given their age, they're not the most productive. But the flavor that we get from them is fantastic. So we do everything. Is like, an old vintage car. You will try your best to save every single original part of it. That's how we treat them.
How long can these trees actually be giving pods, cocoa pods?
Actually, given my experience, cocoa trees don't die.
Why?
They just keep growing, and then they will throw out young shoots, and they will keep growing as long as the conditions are good. Of course, if you have really adverse conditions, then it will be challenging. But on normal conditions, they just keep growing. So that is why I say pruning is, to me, the most important part of it, to keep the trees in good shape.
You have any specific way how you prune?
Well, you look at certain things. First of all, you want to get enough sunlight coming through the trees down to the ground area. You want the trees to be, plumb. You don't want it to be leaning heavily on either side where it could topple over, and you don't want it going into other trees. You keep them apart. So basically, that is it. Yeah.
That's clear. That's clear. And you mentioned one thing before, which I'm very curious about. You said like there were ripened pods that you didn't use because of economical viable reasons. What do you mean with that? Like why don't you take the ripened pods? Why do you leave them still on the tree?
But if they stay on the tree, they tend to attract the fungus.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And you don't want the fungus to stay around. So you
Yeah.
clean the tree of all pods, and then you will spray to get rid of any fungus around and any parasites growing on the tree. So you want your tree totally clean.
I am wondering, is the I don't know if you can still get me, but I will try. I am wondering, is this process the same for all types of varieties, or do they actually change between the varieties? You have to focus on some things, and for this one in particular, you need to focus on the pruning.
It's the same. It's the same for all varieties. Some variety, though, may require heavier pruning than others. Some varieties grow more younger shoots faster, so you would need to pay more attention to them because you don't want these shoots to take over the tree, because the more unnecessary shoots you have, the less energy for the tree going into fruit.
Yeah. And then so there's also this importance of the soil, of course. You already said like you use fertilizer practices, but what other specific practices do you implement to maintain or enhance soil fertility on your farm?
Well, all the waste material, well, not really waste material, but all the trimmings, all the branches that we would prune, right?
Mm-hmm.
We we keep them on the ground. Actually, at this time in the year, when the sun is really, really brutal, you want as much ground cover as possible. So you don't do too much ground cleaning, because you want a little bit of moisture on the ground to remain, right? We use whatever we have in the field as natural fertilizer. Yeah. What we do, we come in closer to the time for bearing, we give the trees a little boost with some organic fertilizer.
Ah, okay. So it's like
Yeah.
organic fertilizers that
Yeah.
you use.
Yeah.
And do you also like look at intercropping ways? Do you also use other plants around your cocoa trees to
Yeah.
keep the soil healthy?
Basically, banana.
Banana
We
trees.
Yeah, we plant a lot of banana trees. It keeps the area cool, and of course we get the banana from them.
No, nice. Actually, keeping the area cool must be quite a challenge these days, no? Because
These days,
because climate change is definitely doing something on the temperature. So, in your experience, how have you seen the effects of climate change impacting the cocoa farming in your region?
Okay, I can tell you over the last 3 to 5 years, we have witnessed some very erratic weather conditions. And I say erratic in that 3 years ago, we had extreme flooding, extreme flooding. And then last year, we had intense heat. So it's kind of moving to extremes. I've been talking to other farmers who are experiencing the same weather pattern, and what it does, it causes the trees to respond in different ways. For example, with the flooding, when we had the flooding, the trees were in survival mode, so there was very little fruiting, because the trees were just trying to survive, right? So the impact on the crop was really, and similarly, when we have the extreme dry weather, we found the same thing. However, in the dry weather, it wasn't so severe. The trees were able to recover quicker, and we had a better crop. So yeah, there is some extremes in the weather pattern over the last, I would say, 10 years. We are seeing some extreme.
And what can you do in order to prepare for this? Because I mean, I understand that the first times you just have to cope with it, but since we are seeing that this is maybe starting to become a norm, what can be done in order to adapt to the heating, like the rise of the heat or the extreme floods?
Well, the flooding, as I'm preparing now, I am keeping my water outlets as clean as possible, preparing for, in the event, and hoping that the flood doesn't last too long. It's all nature, so there is a limit to what you can do, keeping the ground as clean as possible so the water runoff is as quick as possible. In the dry weather, as we are going through now, the help keep ground cover, and we try to maintain as much ground cover as possible so that the trees remain cool, and we keep the root, cool, so that the trees could manage through the dry weather. Now, it's an interesting thing about the dry weather too. Unless it is very intense, the dry weather tends to put the trees through some shock that cause it to flower more. So we're not too worried about the dry weather. We could we have means of spraying and getting water to the roots of the plants, but it's the flooding that we have little control over.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. And so on, if I understand correctly, a cocoa tree goes through the phases of like flowering, like a crop season is generally like 2 cycles of 6 months, right?
Yeah, well, the crop period is from November to February. That's the major crop. You get some coming in around September, October, the beginning, but the major crop is between November, December, January. That's your major crop period.
I understand. Good. Then I wonder, son, when, well, I have to say it differently. How do you see, can you actually see from the pot if it is a quality pot or not? So like the
Well,
pot hanging on on the tree.
yeah. What we have two major diseases that affect the pods. One is the black pod disease, and the other is the witch's broom. From very early, we can observe if these diseases are interfering with the pod. And the moment we observe that, we remove the pods. So yeah, we're very observant on that, because if these pods remain on the tree, it can spread that disease. So yeah, we observe the quality of the pod very early.
And how do you see that? Like the black pot, I assume it becomes black.
It shows up, it starts with a little black spot on the
Ah,
tree, and then it gradually expands. So you will see it expanding. So you can have a crop of pods,
mm-hmm.
and there is just one that is infected. So you don't want that to remain in that crop. You remove it immediately.
I
How do
get
you
it.
fight against the crops, against the diseases? Sorry.
We have organic fungicide that we use. We apply it at least 3 times during the growing process, when the pods are now developing. Just as it now start to develop, we'll spray once. And then depending on how the weather pattern is, we will spray 2 or 3 times. If there's heavy rainfall, we will spray at least 3 times.
I am wondering, we are seeing that cocoa has suffered an increase of prices overall in the last year. What is the impact of pest and disease in this increase of the prices and the availability?
Well, it's all, from what I've seen, it all depends on the crop. 3 years ago, yeah, it was 3 years ago when we had the heavy flooding. We literally had very, very little harvest. There was almost no crop at all. So yeah, these things will affect the crop and the amount of cocoa harvested. And that is around the time that the price started going up. So yeah, weather conditions, pests and disease will affect the size of the harvest, which eventually will affect price. I can tell you, in my country, the number of farmers are not increasing, and they are getting older. So you would find that we will face a challenge of less and less production. Again, as I said earlier, if the return on the investment is not attractive, you will not find young people coming into the industry.
But I understand that the return of investment has been non-attractive maybe for longer. In that sense, do you believe that it's simply that cocoa has been non-valued enough in the past, or is it a matter that now maybe next generations are just looking for a higher return of investment in general?
Yes, that exactly is the point. The younger generation are looking for a better standard of living, which cocoa cannot offer right now. And given the many, as I said earlier, in Trinidad, we have the oil and gas industry, which is, where the money is. There's a natural progression towards all the related industries where you can get a better income.
Yeah.
So that challenge is there.
Yeah, that's a very big one, right? That is
Yeah.
a systemal change what happened there over the years, and that only yeah, like fair prices is one of the things that has to come into this place to make it again attractive also for the next generation. Because what is the average age around cocoa farms that you have spoken to? Like you said, they become older. So what is the average age?
Yeah, I think the average age is about 65 right now.
65.
Yeah.
Well, in the Netherlands, in 2 years, they should go in a retirement phase. That is a very late stage.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have now talked about the process till the blooming part and now also the maintaining part, but then also there comes the harvesting part. What is the way or process that you put into practice for harvesting cocoa?
Okay, we organize our harvesting every 2 weeks, so that we get the best ripe pods. We don't allow them to go too overripe. So every 2 weeks we do a harvesting, and we make sure we harvest the ripe pods, get them into the fermentation as soon as possible. So we don't leave our pods for more than 1 day on the ground, and we will get them into fermentation, let's say within 2 days.
Yeah, and okay.
Yeah, and in the process of harvesting also, we do some cleaning of the trees. As I said, we remove any black pods.
Yeah.
So our harvesting is centered around a 2-week process,
Clearing. Yeah.
and we make sure we harvest the ripe pods at the right time, get them into fermentation. The key is getting the ripe pods one stage. You don't want overripe pods. You don't want any contaminated pods. You want one clean ripe pods going into fermentation, because it could, if you have all different ripened state, your fermentation could be, kind of compromised.
I wonder, Sharon, do you the pods, the cocoa beans, do you use them only for your chocolate, or do you also sell it to third parties?
No, we use all our beans exclusively for our chocolate.
Okay. It's because I was just wondering, like in a moment of other people trying to buy the beans, like what do they look into? But if you are using most of them yourself, then it's a question that doesn't apply in here, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, we use all our beans for our chocolate. And it's important to have total control of your beans, because good chocolate starts with good beans. If you don't have well processed beans, you can't make good chocolate.
And then there comes the part, right? The post-harvesting part where the flavor gets, let's say, risen up due to
Exactly.
the drying and fermentation period, right? How do you take care of that, Saran?
Okay, as I said, we don't allow our pods to remain in the field for more than a day. So we get our pods all together into the fermentation process. We don't mix 1 day pods, 1 day beans with another day beans. We all one fermentation. So we have we organize our fermentation around that harvest. And so we monitor that as we go into the fermentation process. The first day of fermentation, we want all the juice to drain out, so we organize our fermentation process so that all the juice drain out. And then we start the process where we start building heat to what the heat does. It kills the germination process. Now, when the beans, as with any ripe fruit, the moment it is harvested, they tend to go into germination process, and that creates a certain enzyme which you don't want. That starts making the cocoa become more bitter. You don't want that. So you organize your fermentation that by day 2, you must start building heat to kill that germination process. And capture now, you capture in the good enzymes in the beans, right? So that now you develop that process now over the next 2, 3 days, and you will monitor it. We do it through smell, cuttings, visual, and tasting throughout the period to see how the beans are responding. And let me say this, that is where good chocolate is made. If you don't get that process right, you can't make good chocolate. Now, there is not much science into it to say you could get exact measurement. It's all a question of smell, taste, But given my experience over the years, I think I have a good feel for it. And I'm sure when you tasted our chocolate, you recognize the quality of the beans that went into it.
Yes, I can confirm that. I do. I wonder what are then the specific elements where you look at by smelling and tasting these beans during the fermentation process.
Right. So the number one test is when you cut the beans, you look at how the ridges in the beans are developing. Now, an unfermented bean, when you cut it, is just a smooth beans inside. But as the fermentation process grows, you will see the ridges inside developing. What that means is that the unwanted enzymes and fluid inside the beans are gradually draining out so that these ridges or drains start showing up. And that is the signal of how fermentation is progressing. Of course, with the smell, and the heat, it will tell you a very important part of the whole process is how regular you turn the beans during fermentation. Now, turning the beans in the fermentation boxes allow for oxygen to go through, which will help fermentation. So you have to judge it how often you want to turn. Of course, when you turn, some of the heat comes off, so you have to rebuild that heat. So all these aspects of it that you will judge by a feel and testing the temperature. Sometimes, depending on the different times of the year, you would want to go on to a 5, a 6 day, or even a 7 day fermentation program. So all these are little things that you have to follow.
How do your beans affect the final taste of your chocolate? What do you think that there's what is the translation that you get? Like, what is the specific, like the aroma or the taste that your beans are providing to your chocolate?
When I am drying my beans, I regularly will taste, 1 or 2 every so often during the day. And the major thing you look for is the amount of acidity, how acidic the beans are. You, at that point in time, the only thing you can do is to vary your drying process. For example, you don't want the drying to be too rapid, so you would dry under cool conditions where you allow some sunlight to come in and then you allow it to cool, and you make it a gradual drying process. However, if the beans are not very acidic, and you want it to dry out fast, you open it up to more heat. So I mean, there's very little you can change in terms of your flavor of your beans once it come out of fermentation, but your drying could be helpful.
That is very interesting.
There is no script to these things. It's all a matter of experience.
But then
No,
I'm wondering what makes the beans to taste different? Because in the end, if we in theory would apply this process to all beans, regardless their origin, we will have always the same taste of chocolate. Or where does the taste of chocolate, like the nutty or the booty or the smoked, appear in there?
Well, all right. Let's go back to the origin. The flavor that you get from the trees, that is the flavor you have to work with. The fermentation will give you an opportunity to decide what quality beans you want. Now, in the old time days, I understand that farmers used to use things like molasses in their fermentation or overripe bananas and some other sweet fruits they will put into the fermentation to give flavor. I'm not sure that it adds much to the flavor or it adds anything to the flavor, but people tried, and keep trying all sorts of things. I heard of one brand that allows the beans to go into a fungus growing state to get a certain flavor from the beans. So you can try several things to see how you can get the flavor that you want.
that is it is. I learn every time more and more, and that's great. I have a very like question that always stick to my head all the time when I talk about people around cocoa, because we are facing a challenging time within cocoa, and I have always been wondering for the cocoa farmers within the space, how, like, what do you think that the future holds for you as cocoa farmers and craft chocolate makers?
It has to do with the quality of the variety of cocoa that is being grown, improving in production on the trees. As I said, our plantation is an old plantation, so the productivity level of the trees are not very great. I have planted approximately 2,000 new trees. Some are already starting to bear fruits. Um, but getting the right variety and getting a high yield is a starting point to getting more beans so that your farm could become more economical. If you have a greater production level, then you're starting with a good base. Um, there are some farmers who would prefer to stay on the farm and just grow, produce beans, and there are others who can take it down the value chain and make chocolate. I think it's a challenge taking it down the value chain if you are a farmer to put out that additional investment to go into chocolate making. And then all that requires is a challenge.
Yeah.
But if we can get the farms more productive, if we could deal with the challenges of climate change and pest control, disease control, yeah, it can become um, a more profitable enterprise. I'm not I'm not in a doomsday state with regards to the industry. I am more hopeful for the industry.
That's what we would like to hear.
Of course, on the international on the international market, we would love to see that the price remain at a reasonable level that will give everybody a good return. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that more and more. Of course, an additional aspect of it is government support. Now, things like, as I said, in our country, where infrastructure development is key. You want to have good access roads. You want to have good drainage outlets. And of course, you want to have assistance with regards to pests. control. So all these additional support will help. Of course, the international organizations are contributing. In fact, the FAO has some consultants right now in our country, and they are coming to my estate to do some testing, soil testing, and to put down some equipment to measure climate weather conditions to see what impact climate change is having. So yeah, we're getting some international advice. All these things help.
But you say that maybe when we talk about, I don't know, this doomsday or this craze around chocolate and cocoa rising prices, is it more that it's mass chocolate, the one that gets endangered more than craft chocolate, because craft chocolate in the end serves to a more or less niche group of the population that are more eager to pay, that are these are practices that are already not externalizing costs, such as I don't know, destroying the soil as mass production can do. And would you say that then this craze comes more for the fact that maybe the supermarket bar will be more expensive than the craft chocolate bar itself?
Um, well, let me answer that. And there are two major aspects of that question, and that is one, and I raised that with some of the experts at Chakua this year. Uh, how do we lift the what good crafted dark chocolate can do for health? Good chocolate as a health product. I haven't seen any aspect of that in Chakua. That awareness of dark chocolate as a health product. So yeah, if we can move the attention towards dark chocolate as a health product, so it will challenge the more mass chocolate influence on the consumer, and let the consumer know that a good chocolate could be a health benefit, and that could have some impact. The other aspect of it that I had raised is that yeah, we can have good dark chocolate being produced in origin countries, but the thing is getting it to the consumer in Europe and the other big market. And one aspect of that could be we have the manufacturing process in the consuming countries, so that dark chocolate can be produced by farmers in the consuming countries, where you have some mechanism by which they can afford to get their beans into a manufacturing process in the consuming countries, so that it makes exporting of complete chocolate much easier. Right now, for me to get my chocolate to Europe is pretty expensive through air freight. So yeah, to come back to your question, I don't know if I responded to everything you asked, but dark chocolate as a health product could be a major challenge to mass chocolate.
Indeed, indeed. That's interesting aspect actually, and it would be nice to see. I am a thinker. Yeah, chocolate is a nice product to consume. This, in my opinion, not a necessity. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure that I am eager to pay for, and I hope that it stays for long. But I believe that maybe part of this reputation can be also complemented with it's a pleasure I'm eager to pay for, and also has an actual benefit for my health. I believe that is better marketing for it even.
Yeah. Well, a third aspect which I want to get across to you all, and this emphasis now on deforestation. All right. And again, I challenge some of the experts at Chakua on deforestation. When we plant 1,000 cocoa trees, we also add a lot to enhancing the whole ecology of the climate and everything. So, this emphasis on deforestation has to be carefully matched with how much we are replacing to the environment by planting more cocoa trees. Of course, I am going into a phase where I'm looking at, in addition to bananas, to putting in some fruit trees as well, which I'm not sure, but some experts believe that fruit trees around help the flavor of the cocoa. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try it. So yeah, we have to be careful how much we emphasize on deforestation and how much the cocoa farmer adds to, enhancing the
Yeah,
environment.
yeah,
I agree. At the same time, we also, not for the farming itself, but maybe for mass production, we also need to be careful with the opposite, with the saying, we take out all these trees in order to put cocoa because this enhances the ecological feeling. I guess that there's a balance there, no? Like
Yeah,
between
yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
not taking no, not taking trees like cocoa farmers cannot contribute to ecology, and also trees shall be the only tree.
I agree. There has to be a balance.
yeah. I think so as well. I think so as well. Saran, we have fired you with a lot of questions, and you have given great, insightful answers. I have been becoming a more and more of an expert around cocoa and chocolate nowadays.
Excellent.
And now I will give you the opportunity to ask us a question.
Well, I would want to put it this way. I am so encouraged to see young people like you all showing so much interest in cocoa and cocoa cultivation and taking that message around, because uh, there's so many people in Europe and the developed world who may never have seen a cocoa tree and never know what it is to produce cocoa beans to make chocolate. And so
No.
your work in taking that message around will be of tremendous help in getting a little connection, not a little connection, but a lot of awareness of what it is to be a cocoa farmer and what it is to produce cocoa to make chocolate. So I admire you all for your efforts. I'm extremely happy to be part of it, and take the message around. It will help the cocoa industry for certain. So
Yeah,
thank you
well,
all so much.
you're welcome, welcome. No, I mean, you do the
Uh,
work. We just spread
exactly,
it.
nothing compared to what you do. Exactly.
I mean, you're the expert. You're the craftsman, right? That is also, yeah. Like as you said, I think like, a lot of people don't know the process of making chocolate, have seen cocoa trees in their lives, etc. And I think that relationship towards food is also like we are losing it. We had it like lately in the conversation as well about it, that we becoming more disconnected from actually where our food comes from, what's on the plate. But we believe we need it to actually bring us the best and help in the transitions that are needed, right? Like where one of them, which you are facing within cocoa, like we need to make a better a place around that. That is by helping to get connected again to where your food comes from.
Yeah.
Fantastic,
Also,
fantastic.
yeah, I had to do a little. I was writing a post for LinkedIn, and while I was writing it, I was having a little bit of a rant because I was thinking it really pisses me off how little value people gives to food in some way. And I believe probably farmer is one of the most important jobs in the world. Cocoa farmers or any cocoa farmer, like the people that is providing us with food, and that you're saying it that in the end that for many young generations they all want to have like more money, more better life, and it's completely understandable. I am the first one, but at the same time it's like, why are we not providing the people who is providing us with food with like more money? And what I was writing is like, why all the money is going, and I know the answer, but it's a kind of a rhetorical question, but why all the money is going to football, to actors, to music industry, and all these things? when it's really nice the entertainment that they provide, but it's not comparable to the fact that somebody's feeding us. So I think that the least thing we can do is try to at least put the people who's feeding us in the
Well,
spotlight.
The spotlight.
I think we well, you all are on to a good. I think you all are on to a good thing in that you all can make cocoa farming glamorous. You all
Yeah.
can make it attractive. You all can add some excitement to it. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a
That's true.
challenge. I think we can start there.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
it,
That's true.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
There is I don't know where it came from, but there is this saying that chocolate is one of the foods of the gods. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Something of Aztecs, no, like or Mayans or
Yeah.
something like that. They used to give cocoa beans, no, for
Well,
as for the gods.
I think it came from the aspect of being a pure food. And when I say a pure food, like honey, honey doesn't spoil, salt doesn't spoil. And raw chocolate, raw, pure chocolate can survive for many, many years, hundreds. So there is that aspect of it. I don't know how the foods of the gods come about with that. But yeah, we can make the whole process of cocoa farming a more glamorous and a more attractive. And in my business, I also had considered, and I'm still considering, ecotourism part of the business as a supplement to what we
To
get.
visualize.
We had started a program, but then COVID came and that thing. So with my wife, I'm still considering that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's a good way to get people around and bring the
Yeah,
story basically into the experience part
yeah, to
because that's
experience
also
the.
very important. Yeah, like we can only visualize it, but then still people cannot experience it, right? Like
Yeah,
that is another phase.
yeah, yeah.
And but Saran, talking about the food and and anything also around God related foods, what is for you? What is your favorite food or dish, Saran?
Well, in Trinidad, curry is our number one.
Curry.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and we have a particular street food called doubles. I don't know.
Doubles.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of it, but yeah, if you Google it, you will see a lot of how I'll say it, romanticizing of it. Lots of people right now in Trinidad. It is the
Ah,
carnival time, so we have
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of
With chickpeas.
yes, yes. We have a lot of foreigners down
Looks
here for the
very tasty.
carnival. And they will tell you as soon as they touch down, the first thing they want to look for is a doubles.
Yeah, it looks very tasty, huh?
It
Right.
is.
Yes. So
Oh,
what?
this looks like a dish I can make at home.
Yeah, we could try. We could try.
Yeah. Yeah.
No?
It's not difficult.
No, it's like it looks very tasty, like a
Yeah.
curry kind of thinking with chickpeas. Nice. Well,
Yeah.
thanks
So,
for
Well, Sarah,
mentioning.
well, next time we
thanks.
next time
Yeah.
we next time we meet, let me know how it is.
Yes, yes, yes. I will
We will
send you
try. We
a
will try.
photo. I will send you a photo.
Sure, sure, sure.
Well, Sarah, thanks a lot for this conversation that you give us a chance to have with you. I think we learned a lot about the whole cocoa process, like really in depth and from the best source possible, like person that already since he was little has been grown around the cocoa and
Yes.
understands all the aspects in order to make sure that the best cocoa bean reaches the best chocolate bar. So we can only again thank you for your time, for your insights, for your valuable knowledge that you were eager to share with us, and wish you the best with Gary Chocolate and with your farm, and that you have all the best of the successes.
Yeah, with your family. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
enjoy one piece here. I still
Yeah.
have Kerry chocolate. I
Okay.
encourage all the listeners to go to Shokoa also next year to see it and taste it themselves.
Yes, we'll be there. We'll be there. Thanks so much, guys. And I really appreciate you spreading the message.